Hey, thank you so much for being tuned in tonight. We got a great discussion tonight. The discussion tonight is ending the battle of the sexes, sex versus money. And I got some distinguished men and women of God, and they are going to let you know how they feel about this topic. They're going to be candid, and I'm getting ready to bring them in now. Here they come now. How are y'all doing tonight?
Hello.
How are you?
Let's go.
Yes.
Oh,
Definitely
great.
glad to have everyone. And I'm telling you, I know you guys have been anticipating, you guys have been waiting on this discussion. And we are here today. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hey, what's going on, Andre? Hey, what's up? How you doing? Good to see that you're on. And so, hey, tonight, let's go ahead and let's be candid. And let's go ahead and let everybody know how we feel. You who are joining tonight, be candid is what we want you to know, that we are expecting your comments. We want to hear from you. If you are feeling what somebody is saying, if you're feeling their points, everything that they're saying, definitely let them know in the comments that you definitely agree with them or you disagree. And so we are ready on tonight. And I'm going to give my guests a chance to introduce themselves. I'm going to start at the bottom to the top because we're going to go ladies first. So we're going to start at the bottom to the top. And we're going to go ahead and start with Tree, and you can introduce yourself and tell the people anything that you'd like for them to know about you.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Tree. I go by Tree, real name Teresa. I am a mother of three. I am a life coach. I'm also a doula. For my career, I'm a nurse. I've been doing that for several years now. I enjoy what I do. And I am a mentor, and I love talking to people and getting advice and hearing advice as well, especially regarding relationships. So I'm glad I can be here.
Absolutely. Glad to have you. Glad to have you, Tree. And yes, go ahead, Lana.
My name is Lana. I have a 6-year-old daughter. I'm a mother first, a manager, and a mentor. I have been life coaching for a few years now, and it's like something I fell into and didn't realize I was doing it without the title. I really enjoy it. I am a divorcee, so I have a lot to say about relationships.
Absolutely. Glad to have you as well. Glad to have you, Lana. And my man, JB.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jared Bogarty, and I am what's known as a social media influencer. For those who don't know, I go from different chat rooms to YouTube channels in these streets, and we have these conversations about men and women, sex, money, finances, those type of things. So we try to get different information from different places to help people understand this thing called love and relationships and marriage a little bit better, and also have a background in ministry, banking, leadership, all my life, basically. So those are some of the things that we bring to the table when we have conversations like this. So we pretty much keep it even keel as far as holding in the role to make sure we do everything fairly, so to speak. So pretty much like the enforcer of the group.
Absolutely. Glad to have you as always, my man. And go ahead, my man, Brian.
Hey, what's going on, y'all? My name is Coach Brian Thomas. I am a life coach, relationship coach, dating coach, future matchmaker, anything that has to do with relationships. My emphasis is to take your history and to make it better and to put you in the best position to win. I have a degree in sociology, so I pretty much read people all day, every day. So if you try to get it past me, I'm going to tell you about yourself and you ain't got to tell me much. But I'm excited about the conversation. I believe that, through my own experiences being, married once now, being divorced and being single, I understand the different elements about relationships, but not in the way to where I am, really pointing the finger, but to introduce accountability at a higher level. And as long as you have accountability, you can make it throughout any place in life.
Absolutely. As always, glad to have you as well, Brian. And those who don't know me, my name is Elder Tamel Brown of Fruit Bearer Ministries. I am also the founder of Single Saved with No Kids. I'm also a singer-songwriter. Single It's All About You is out now. It's available with streaming, and you can go and cop it if you like the music. And this is what I do as well. This is part of my ministry as well. I love Black love. And so we're trying to bridge the gap of communication between men and women, because for some reason, these relationships are not lasting. And so we want to come to some conclusions. We want some answers. It's always good to have the conversation so that we can stimulate some understanding between the men and women. And so here we go. We're not going to hold you no longer, but let's go ahead and start with the first question. And this first question, anybody can jump in. I'm not going in any particular order. And so the first question, and tonight we're talking about ending the battle of the sexes. We're ending the battle of the sexes. Ending the battle of the sexes, sex versus money. And so the first question is, how important to you is having a discussion about money and finances before getting into a committed relationship? How important to you is having a discussion about money and finances before getting into a committed relationship?
Is this a scale of 1 to 10 or 1 to 100? Which one? Man, I'm putting it to you like this. It's one of the most important things that you have, because when you're considering committed relationship, you're dealing with how people are going to handle one of the resources that really is important in life, and that's money. And I think where a lot of individuals make the mistake is the assumption that just because a person says that they make a certain amount of money, that they say, okay, well, they make 65,000. That means that, we're going to be all right. Well, as I've learned from my brother Jared over there, as far as like finances, a person could say they make 65,000, but how they spend it, what they spending habits are, what's the debt to income? What's their debt to income ratio? For every dollar that comes out, what percentage of that dollar is going back into bills, and what is actually, that you can actually, like, disposable income that you can use to do some of the things. So I think it is extremely important that you have those conversations, because when you don't have those conversations, now you diving into the autopilot of gender roles.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree. It's very important to have that conversation, but I'm going to allow anybody else who want to jump in and say something about how important it is to have that conversation. Anybody can jump in there.
I have to agree with Brian. You never want to assume anything. If I'm not mistaken, I think the second biggest cause of divorce is finance. So I don't see why anyone would want to leave that on the table and not have that discussion. Definitely look at that. I've been in a situation, I've been silly and went into a situation just looking at how much we made together, thinking that it was all going to work out. And, I never really considered the debt, that was on the table. That was an issue. And then the continuing to increase the debt instead of paying the debt down. So we also want to, if there is debt, you want to discuss it. What are we going to do about this debt collectively? Set some goals. When we're going to get this paid off. So that's just not something that you want to overlook or assume.
So I agree with both Brian and Luna. The other flip side of that is when you're in a relationship and you're exiting a relationship and you've incurred all this debt and you're just thinking about exiting, you're not really thinking about what you two have, the debt that you two have incurred over, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years. And now you have to branch out on your own. And when you're trying to either get a house or get a car, you're not thinking about, all that debt that you brought with you. Because if the other person, whether it's a he or a she, if the other person wasn't bearing their weight in that relationship, and so everything was in your name, they're leaving scot-free. You're leaving with a load of monetary and financial issues that you have to figure out by yourself. So I think definitely when you're going into a relationship, that should definitely be, like Luna said, the top one or first or second thing that should be on the table and discussed. Because things aren't getting cheaper either. So
Right.
Right.
Hey, that's
Definitely
real.
not.
That's real. Everything I agree with everything that everybody is saying. I do think it's very important to have that conversation because first you want to find out if the individual is a good steward over their finances. Because I know I feel really blessed to be able to have the job that I have now and to be able to have made the money I've made now. And it would be very risky for somebody to come in there and mess all the good that I got going on and come in and drain the finances, everything that I've built and I've established for myself. Because, you know, if we be real and we be honest, I'm pretty sure some of the brothers have been with some women who have tried to drain their pockets. I'm telling you, when a woman is not a good steward of their finances, that can cause some unnecessary stress. It's not that the brothers don't want to help. We definitely, any woman that I'm with, you definitely want to help them, be there for them. But when they come in with a lot of debt and they're always needing something, you're going to kind of feel a certain kind of way as a man, like, man, is this going to be going on continuously? Is she, and you ask those questions, is she a good steward of her finances? Can I trust her with the finances? Look, we're going to have the same bank accounts, at least one, right? And so am I going to be able to trust her? Is she going to drain that bank account, all that money I got in that bank account? Are you going to drain it? So you ask all these, and see, that's why it's so important to have these conversations so you can kind of know. And this leads to the second question is, and men and women, if someone you are dating revealed to you that they had a money spending problem, would that be a deal breaker for you? Tell me why or why not. Would that be a deal breaker if you found out that the person that you was with had a spending issue?
Absolutely.
Well, here's the thing. I'm going to talk about this one. Normally, what you want to do is you want to find out what that person's relationship is with money and why they do what they do. Here's the thing. Sometimes people look at money as a finite resource. So they feel like it's a never-ending bottomless pit of money and you can just pull it out of nowhere. Some people may view money as something that's, you know, that's endless, or it does have a end to it. You know what I mean? I'm from the banking world, and we used to look at people's accounts all the time. You know, you can only, you know, spend out what you bring in. You know what I mean? And then in some cases, people leverage their debt with credit cards, interest. Those are the numbers that people need to address, because you want to take the emotion out of numbers and say, hey, this is what we got coming in, this is what we have going out. Now, there's only two ways that you can handle a money situation. Either you're going to bring more money in, or you're going to dial a spending back. And what happens is how that person handles money is how they're going to address finances. You see what I'm saying? Like, some people say, well, hey, I deserve to have this. Well, I'm the type of person that say, well, did you work to have that? You see what I'm saying? Those type of things. So when you have conversations about money, and you want to find out exactly what that person's relationship is to money. Do they view it as a finite resource, or do they view it as something that they can easily get all the time? And 9 times out of 10, if you have that particular conversation, that will begin to open up the doors on how you guys are going to move forward as far as how you're going to deal with money and finances. Is this person somebody who's going to reveal to you, hey, this is all my debt, this is all I have coming in, put it on the table, here's what it is? Or it may be a situation where a person doesn't like to feel comfortable about saying, hey, I bring an X amount of money. They might not feel comfortable about that because they may have some type of complex about, well, I only make so much money. You see what I'm saying? That type of thing. Or can you make more money? 9 times out of 10 in relationships, most people want to be secure in their being. Say, hey, I want to make sure that nobody's going to come pick up the car, or, you know what I mean, the lights are going to be on. Nobody wants to feel like their back is up against the wall every single day. People want to be comfortable when it comes to things like that. So whenever you have a conversation with people, make sure that you understand their relationship with money and how they handle it and how they view it.
Totally agree.
I would ask them to define problem, because it may be a problem to them, but it may not be a problem to me. So I would have to see the whole picture. I mean, is it that you're eating out every day and that's a problem? Well, it would be a problem if you have a whole lot of debt and you're not willing to compensate and eat at home, you know, and not eat out so much. So I would really have to just look at the overall picture and know what the exact problem is.
Yes, and it's not all the time cash. Credit card debt is real. It
Yes.
is very real. So, you know, even in a dating phase, it's like, okay, we're dating, he's paying. Or, you know, we're going on these lavish trips and he's paying. Of course, I'm doing my part, but at the same time, it's like, and first of all, is it one credit card, 2, 3, or 4? You know, so it's like, and then those have to be paid off. So, you know, what, like everyone is saying, what does finances look like to you? What is your definition of it? Because if you think having credit cards mean that for whatever reason you're good financially, that's not necessarily the case. Because if you got $5,000 on one credit card, 10 on another, and you keep going, all your money is going to paying those credit cards off. You know, so it's not just cash. Sometimes it's debt and credit cards as well. So that's another thing to take into consideration.
Absolutely.
I absolutely agree. You guys made some great points, especially about the credit card debt. And also, I think I like what everybody said. I know Lana was saying that it just depends on the situation, as far as you'd have to take a look at each other's finances and see, you know, how much debt you do have. I think also it's important too. I know a lot of couples don't want to discuss it. I know a lot of people don't want to discuss it, I guess, in the getting to know you process. But are you comfortable in discussing, you know, hey, what's that credit score looking like? Because look, if we're trying to get a house together, if we're trying to, you know, invest in some property, I got to know, hey, how's that credit score? Because you might be, if we're going to come together as a unit, we want to be able to attain some things. But if your credit is so low where if we put our credit together, you may be the one that stops the transition from happening successfully because your credit is bad. So how do you feel about that? Do you think that's something good to discuss? Are you open to discussing your credit score with your potential mate?
I always lead with it, and I don't make any demands. I'll, you know, put it out there. Hey, this is my credit score. This is what I make. If they don't reciprocate, that tells me where they're at, and I leave it at that. You know, I might even revisit it after some more time is invested. But I don't push the issue. I want to be with someone that's willing to be transparent without feeling like they have to be manipulated or coerced to just embellish the information. If they're not willing to do that, then that kind of tells you how successful you're going to be with them in the long haul.
Definitely a red flag if they don't want to discuss it. And it's not like, okay, our dating sector is over, but I definitely know where to place and accommodate us going forward.
Absolutely. And
yes.
I know very good points. I know Jared was saying something as well. He said something really good too about that as well. And so this last question here, when it comes to the money is, and I know this is something that I like to hear from the ladies, of course, the first, and then the men. But does a man, and that's one of our questions, does a man have to be making a certain amount of money before you decide to date him?
There's the loaded question.
Right?
Oh, come on,
unload it.
So
that's a loaded question. I'm going to try to break through the bits. I'm going to be very honest. And this is due to experience that I've had, my own personal experience. Once upon a time, I had no problem with not setting any parameters around that. And it didn't work out for me. And not just one time, a couple times. And I'm being very, very transparent. I said I don't ever want to place myself in a position where I feel like I'm being taken for granted and advantage of again. And so you have to learn for not setting certain boundaries. So I feel like by setting some parameters, I'm not going into a situation with rose-colored glasses on. So I want to be in alignment. I'm not going to set an exact amount, but there's a range. And I think it has a lot, and correct me, brothers, if I'm wrong. I think for me, it has a lot to do with the male psyche. I personally think that a lot of men prefer to make more than their women. I have been in situations where I felt like it made them uncomfortable that I made more than them. I don't think that I've done things to make them feel uncomfortable. I just think that it's just something that they just didn't feel good about. And that can cause a lot of problems. So with that being said, that's my reasoning for wanting them to make a certain amount, not being taken for granted. And then it just not playing on his mental.
And so for me, I've never really had a issue being in a relationship where both of us held our own and held our weight. However, since I've exited and been separated, it's come up a lot more. And like Lana said, I don't know if it's because I have a lot more to lose now. And I think about every facet financially, like, what do I stand to gain? Because I want us to be able to reciprocate financially each other. So it's very important for him to make a certain amount. I won't say that it means that we will not date or move forward in our relationship, but I will say I need to know, as I think Jared said, Tamel said, are you a good steward of your money? Because if you're making $55,000 or $40,000 a year and you're a good steward, us coming together, that'll double, it'll triple, if we're aligned financially in our goals. So no, and I think when you're equally yoked with your mate, I think that financially things will pick up. I think you come together, you have ideas, you set goals and aspirations, and you make them. So that's not a deal breaker, so to speak. But if you're only making $55,000 a year and you have debt all over the place and you've filed bankruptcy, or your thing is to sue every job you're at to try to find, I can't work with you. That's definitely a no, and that's definitely thank you, sir. Have a blessed life. I will not put myself in that situation. I have too much to lose.
Yeah, that's real. I love it. I love hearing from the ladies on that perspective, because that is, I think Lana said it earlier, the number one. This is why this conversation is so important, because if you look on Google, you can Google it. You can Google the statistics, but the number one reason for divorce is sexual issues, and the second reason is financial issues. So we're trying to divorce-proof our future marriages. When we're talking about these different situations, these different things. Go ahead. You had your hand up. Go ahead, Tree.
Yes. And so the other thing, I don't think we realize either, and Lana, jump in. Us as women, when we have children, breakups, guys can go. They can either choose to help or not. So I'm very passionate about this. You taking away from me financially, I feel like that's a slight against one of my children. Because for you not to think that you coming in disturbing my financial stability is not going to affect my children, that's a problem for me. So that's definitely something us women, because we lose more during a breakup or during a coming together, because we are generally nurturers and givers. So we don't have a problem with cultivating an idea or, trying to figure out how we can flourish the relationship emotionally, physically, financially. We don't have a problem doing that. But I need that to be reciprocated. And if you cannot, you're impeding on my children. I can deal with me, but when it comes to those babies, absolutely not.
Hey, look, I'm seeing some eyebrows raised. I'm seeing some faces. Hey, come on. Listen, and see, this is good because you're getting it from a woman who are not just single, but they do have children. And so that's very important. I mean, what she just said, I haven't heard that perspective, but as Tree broke it down, it makes you kind of think, okay, when a man does leave the relationship, yeah, we can come and go. And so that's why, again, it's so important to definitely choose correctly who you're going to decide to be with, because you're not just talk about the financial situations that may change, but emotionally, it can be emotionally draining. It's emotionally tough on the kids, on everybody involved. And then, like you said, you're used to a certain amount of money coming in when you have two people, and then once that's gone, and it just depends on. That's why I'll ask this a little bit later. But go ahead, brothers. I saw the faces. I saw the eyebrows raised. Go ahead and express yourselves.
Jared, you want to go first, or you want me to go
Go
first?
ahead, I cleaned it up.
So this is one thing that I think when we're looking at relationships that we have to really pay attention to. And this is something that I have seen. One of the biggest issues in relationships is the assumption that the person is going to stay in the same level. So what you have to take into account is that if this is somebody that you're going to choose, you have to choose an individual that's going to work with you, which means that there needs to be a plan in place, meaning that, okay, if this man is making $65,000, he's a good steward over his money. That means that we need to have some things in place, because I'm going to tell y'all something about relationships. I'm going to tell y'all something about life. Relationships change because people don't have conversations, and life happens because that's just the formation of life. And so what you got to take into account is you may have a good man and he may be making this kind of money, but something may end up happening in life where you didn't have the conversation that you were supposed to have before that particular point. And so now you're in a bind, or now you're in a situation where you're like, man, he's not able to do as much as I thought he was able to do. Well, if you have certain conversations beforehand about, hey, listen, in the event that this particular thing happens, this is where that woman who trusted that man's leadership will be able to come in and to help fulfill that responsibility that's left. Because I think for many of the men where we have issues, now I'm not saying every woman, and I'm not saying majority of women, but what I'm saying is that there is a fundamental belief that the man is always going to be in this strong man position, and that he isn't going to need some type of help later down the line to be able to kind of walk down this journey. Because listen, I've been in a household, my father was the breadwinner for a number of years, but there was a season where he lost his job. And guess what ended up happening? My mother stepped up to the plate and she handled the responsibilities, because I do believe that though it is considered that, hey, a man makes this amount of money, I also do believe that it is a responsibility of that woman who has sown her life into that vision to be ready to handle the responsibility in the event that life happens.
Let me explain a little bit something to you. First of all, before you know where you're going, you got to know where you're starting from. And having a situation with how people view gender roles. Okay. I've run into a lot of problems in the conversations where we actually try to take one thing and convert it into something else. So basically you have to start up with your value system. You know what I mean? You can't take modern day living and try to squeeze it into traditional roles. You see what I'm saying? First of all, you have to decide on, okay, who's going to have the ultimate say so? Or is this going to be a situation where we actually have dual roles? You see what I'm saying? Because that's going to dictate how you're going to move forward. 9 times out of 10, the reason why people have fights with money is because they don't put stuff on paper. If you put stuff on paper, it takes the emotion completely out of it. You see what I'm saying? There are some situations where people feel like, well, they'll tell you, well, I want the man to make more money than me. Okay, well, how much money do you make? Okay, does that really make you feel comfortable? Okay. Let's say I make $50,000. Okay, well, my man has to make 3 times as much money as I make. Okay, realistically speaking, how many men in this country make X amount of dollars over this amount? Is this a realistic situation? Is this something that we could possibly do? You never want to tell somebody no. straight out. You want to give them an opportunity to say, how can we get to that position? Does that make you feel comfortable? Is it a security thing? Are you comfortable with having X amount of dollars saved up? Do we have a plan? You always want to use numbers because you take the emotion out of it, because some people have a different type of relationship with money. Some, like I stated earlier, some people might find, hey, this, I might not be able to get it back like I had it before. Somebody said, I can get this money all the time, because some people think that just because somebody makes more money than them, they think that they can run the show. And that's when you start to get into dynamics between men and women, where the woman makes more money. And at the end of the day, if she makes more money, she's going to say, well, you don't get to tell me what to do because I make more money than you. And then that's a problem with the man, because he has a situation where he doesn't really want to have his masculinity challenged, and that causes an internal issue. So that's when you drag emotions into the equation. So what you have to do is, whenever you get into a situation like that, you want to consider the other person's feelings. You see what I'm saying? Because women don't like to be controlled by somebody who makes more money than them, and men don't like to be controlled by women who makes more money than them. What you have to do is you have to bring those two together and say, hey, look, this is what we have. Once you start using we language instead of me language, then you're on the same team. And I think a lot of times the reason why people have problems with that is because their language is not we. It's always me or this person or that person or my money. No, when you put it together, you become one. All of that goes into the same pot. Hey, this is what we decided that we want to do. We want to make sure that we have so much money set aside for college, so much money set aside for retirement. Go ahead and start having those conversations. Say, hey, look, these are the investments that we have. It's going to give us X amount of money. In the future, will this be enough for us to maintain the type of lifestyle that we want? Don't be afraid to have real life numbers conversations, because anytime you leave things vague and say, hey, I want somebody to make this amount of money, start asking questions. Why? Because there may be situations, say, for instance, somebody says, I want you to make more money. Well, let me ask you a better question. Say, for instance, if that person hits the lottery and you have $300 million in your account, is that still an issue? You see what I'm saying? Those are different conversations that you need to have and address over time to find out exactly, hey, is it a comfort thing that you want to have, or is this an effort thing? Because sometimes people want to know if you have a lot of effort. Do you have drive? Do you have grind? Is this something that's constantly baked into you? Is this something that you want to do? Because 9 times out of 10, people want to be secure in their person, their family, their dwelling, that type of thing. And they want to know what your views are on family on down the road. Because think about it. You're not only teaching your children how to deal with each other, you're teaching them to have a responsibility with money. And that goes on for generations on down the road. That's your whole posterity. How you handle it is how your family is going to handle it from here on out. So those are the things that you have to have open and honest conversations and put it on paper, and to remove the emotions out of it, because people really can't come together on emotions, because people sometimes have a hard time discussing what they're feeling. So what you do is you put it on paper to say, hey, look, this is what we got. This is what's coming in, that type of thing. And in that way, it eliminates, and it also creates reassurance on what's going forward. Because if you have a plan and you check off on your plan each and every day, then you're doing what you said you're going to do. Nobody hates anybody more than somebody who does something that they said they wasn't going to do. And that also builds in trust. And you can move forward with somebody you can trust with your money, your person, your life, and that type of thing. So make sure that you take all of the emotions out, write it down on paper. And what the Bible says, write it down and make it plain. That eliminates all type of doubt. And that way you can move forward on it.
I like what I think both you, Jared, and Brian said something about generation and ancestral, somewhere around there. Like, we are trying to conduct ourselves in relationships the same way our parents did and our grandparents did, and we're not moving with the times. So yes, I would love to be treated like my father treats my mom. You know, I would love. And as Brian was saying, sometimes the man, things happen and he is unable to be the breadwinner of the household. And definitely we as women need to be able and in position to move fluidly into the position of being the breadwinner and not have a problem with it. So I think that conversation needs to start happening more often, as well as the conversation of conventional relationships are not, we're in a different age and time, in jobs and stability, everything. We need to move away from the conventionality of relationships and try to find our own season and what that looks like between the two people.
I agree. I was going to say, I never believed in the gender roles. I just believe that you should be a fair contributor to the household as a unit. And if you need to have a discussion about what's fair, have that discussion, but definitely be a fair contributor. Don't ever put all the weight on your partner.
You know, I'm hearing some beautiful things that I haven't heard from the ladies with their mentality and perspective towards money, because it's usually a conversation that is somewhat controversial, because I know a lot of women believe that the man, because of being in that position of just being a man, that a man should pay all the bills. But I don't agree that a man should pay all the bills. Now, if he got it like that, I think that's outstanding. If he can, that's wonderful. But a woman not being willing to, help in some aspects financially, I think that would be a problem for me. I mean, I do believe, because we are men, that we should take care of the brunt or most of the finances. But when we talk about a man being a provider and things of that nature, it's not just money, but it's also other things. People want to put the provider role on a man as just some financial, but it's much more than that. It's leadership. It's other things. It's protection physically. It's so many things. And when the Lord talks about the man being a lead, it's really talking about spiritual. And so I like what the ladies are saying, and Brian broke that thing down. Brian and JB broke some great points down to where you're kind of understanding how a man feels from different perspectives, a man's perspective and a woman's perspective. Sometimes we think about things differently when it comes to money. But what I've been hearing is, it sounds like there's some cohesion in the mentality of everybody that I'm listening to today. And so I know that sometimes, I don't know if it was Lana or she was saying that if a woman makes more than a man, it can be intimidating. But yeah, it can be intimidating to some men, who have that kind of mentality when it comes to money. Sometimes when a woman makes more money than a man, it can encourage a man to come up and be like, oh, she's doing well, she's doing great, I need to do better. But what about that man that is kind of satisfied in the position where he's at? Maybe he's making or 40,000 a year, and he's, that's where he wants to be, and that's all he sees. Would that be an issue?
I mean, it depends on what your goals are collectively and what you're planning on working towards. And so I think that really is couple based.
Yeah, that's one of those things where you have to really understand who you are in a relationship with. And I think one of the issues in relationships today is people think that they can get in a relationship and automatically change the character of who that individual is to fit the description of what they feel they want. And the problem with that is that you have to understand where a person is, and you have to, if they need that motivation to go there, you have to learn them enough to be able to see what it's going to take to motivate them. And one of the things I see on social media a lot of the times is that the finance thing is really an assumptive thing. Like, it is assumed that because you're in a certain position, or because you are a man, that you have to do all of these different things, or because you are a woman, you have to do these certain things. But when you get down to the core of who that person is and begin to really understand what it is that they are, governing themselves to do, then what you'll do is that you will learn how to coexist in that space. One of the biggest issues that I've run across, and this has really helped me, is when I'm having a conversation with an individual, the thing that I'm learning is, number one, if whatever position that I'm going to have in my life with them, I need to understand, how do I pour into that individual without interrupting the process of them putting in what they need to do. Because a lot of times people will try to come in and help you with something, but they try to do it in the ways that benefits them. You have to come in and learn how to help people in the way that benefits them. Because if you try to get the benefit out of it, you're always going to fall short in your pursuit, because you have to always remember that a person's life is not about you. It's about what's the proper contribution that you can give to their life so that organically they can be the person that they're called to be. And if you allow them to grow organically and your intentions are pure, then everything else will fall right in place.
It's funny that you say that, Brian. I was having a conversation with a person, and it was about finances, and they thought that what they were contributing was enough. Well, the person that they thought that they were contributing with or to didn't think it was enough. So they began to tell me how they did this and they did that, and they helped here and they helped there. And I said, well, think about this. I said, did you ever talk to the person to figure out what they wanted you to contribute? And they didn't. I said, and did that person sit down and say, let's talk about what you will contribute? They didn't. So I said, both of you failed to do one important thing, which is ask each other, what would you like for me to contribute? And this is what I would like for you to contribute. And if not, can you? And if you can't, what can you, so that I can know if I'm satisfied with whatever you can contribute? And so we kept talking, and I told her this. I said, I want you to think about a love language. If Lana wants words of affirmation from Jared, and Jared wants gifts from Lana, Lana can't give Jared words of affirmation because that's her thing. She has to give him gifts. So again, Brian, I can't give you what I want you to have, or the journey I see you on. That's not that. I'm taking you out of your mojo. And then it's even more confusing because I'm trying to make you what I want you to be. You're losing who you are trying to be what I want you to be. And now we're left with a puddle of nothing.
Now, let's go even deeper than that. When you try to give an individual what you think that they want, what you're simply saying is, I'm simply giving you what I want to borrow later from you. I want to borrow this later from you. Like, okay, for example, and I learned this, guys, listen to me. When you go buy a gift for a woman, make sure it's something that she wants. Or ladies, when you buy a gift for that man, make sure it's something that he wants. Don't just get him, something that you really like on him so you can borrow it and be like, oh, this is my little hoodie right here. I got it. I really got this hoodie for you. No, you got that hoodie for you so you can borrow it later. And y'all know the ladies don't like to get stuff back. I'm telling y'all business today.
Yeah, that's real. That's definitely real.
Here's my thing. What we have to do is have a healthy discussion about what money is. Money is a tool, not a weapon. You understand what I'm saying? We shouldn't be bludgeoning each other with a shovel, because that's all money is a tool. We need to understand exactly what money is. My dad told me a long time ago, he was like, listen, the value of money changes all the time. And he gave me an example. He said in the 70s, he said Nixon took the dollar off of the gold standard. Okay. So what that did was that actually plummeted the value of the dollar. He told me, he said, if you don't make at least 2% every single year, your money, your buying power decreases. I said, if you think about it, he said, granddaddy bought his house cash money, $3,000. He said, if you do the math on that, he said, he said, stuff doubles every 10 years. So if your income does not double every 10 years, you're not keeping up with the rate of inflation. So enter in years like we've had now with the pandemic. Everything is skyrocketed due to supply chain errors. You see what I'm saying? And problems. So guess what that does? That makes everything go up. A pack of chicken from Walmart used to cost $7.97. Well, now it's $21. Your value of your dollar has been decreased because we've actually printed out all these stimulus checks. So everybody's got money. You understand what I'm saying? So guess what? Your money doesn't spend like it used to. So those are conversations that we need to understand exactly how money works. Then you also got some of my homeboys who took some of their stimulus money and they put it in Bitcoin. So now they got all kind of money flowing out of here. You see what I'm saying? So now we got more money flooding into the system. So those are the things that are conversations that we need to understand exactly what money is, how we use it, and why we use it. It's not to be used as a weapon against each other. It's used as a tool to help each other, to dig each other out of debt. And that way you have a better life. We're supposed to have life abundantly here, not wait till we get to heaven. We're supposed to have some of this heaven down here too. You see what I'm saying? So you want to make sure that you take all the mystery out of money. So that way people have a healthy understanding and a healthy relationship with money. And that way you can have a healthy relationship with each other, because when you're open and transparent with each other to understand how this stuff works, then you shouldn't have it. Here's the thing. When it comes to who makes what, it doesn't matter. It all goes into the same pot for the betterment of everybody. Does that make sense?
Makes a whole lot of sense to me, my man. And so everything that a lot of, everybody, Lana and Tree and Brian, everybody, I took something from everything that you guys said. And I know Tree made a good point about the love languages and knowing those love languages so that you can satisfy, your partner's needs, not just your needs, because you have to know what the love language is. I think it's important that you at least have one love language that's in common, so that you can be on one accord in some aspect of the relationship, but the others, you do have to pay attention to the love languages. I like that. I like what JB was saying, put it on paper. And I know Brian was saying that financial situations can change, so it's important to have the conversations, because a man's financial situation can change, and then it may be time for that woman to step up if a man loses his job or something tragic or hardship takes place. So what I'm hearing tonight, and I think Lana was saying, it depends on the relationship as far as what you expect, what you desire from that particular situation with that particular individual, because everybody's situation is different, and every woman and man is looking for something different when it comes to finances. So instead of me hearing all this, girl, if you ain't making enough money, and I'm not hearing that from you guys. I think that's a beautiful thing. No, really, because you would expect, now he's the man is supposed to pay all the bills, and no, I ain't doing that, girl.
All of that.
Oh,
I'm gonna say something about that.
Yeah.
You can do all of that fussing, all of that. All he should be doing this,
right,
until real life happens, where you're dealing with that person's life being on the line. One of the lessons that I've learned throughout this pandemic is you don't really know what tomorrow is going to bring. You can be fussing with this particular person about the finances and all this other stuff, and that person could be in the hospital the next moment with on life support. And so now you're thinking about all the times that you could have been building something, but you were fussing about something that all you had to do was sit down and have a conversation. See, sometimes these conversations that people have is just a matter of just removing the pride and really, like Jared said, really looking at where the other person is coming from. Because a lot of the times relationships are about consideration. Can you consider the other person and where they're coming from? Can you put yourself in their shoes for about 5 minutes? Because believe it or not, when you're looking at emotions, when you're angry, do you know the time frame that you're actually angry? The time frame from the start of anger to the end of anger is between 9 and 30 seconds. So between 9 and 30 seconds, people make some of the decisions whether they want to handle stuff, and between 9 and 30 seconds, people make a decision, I don't want to be with you no more. So now you didn't set it out of your mouth, and the more and more you feed that, then that anger, the next time it comes along, is even stronger, because you fed into something that you would have just sat down and been like, hey, listen, hold on. Do you really understand what you're about to step into? Do you really understand what it is that you're about to do? Do you really understand that there are some decisions that you make that emotionally are lower than the logic that it takes for you to calm down and really see, hey, listen, you know what? I was upset at that particular moment. But people don't want to have those conversations. People just, I want what I want. I want what I want now. And I'm like, you can't have every meal in the microwave. Some meals need to be cooked.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's how you save money.
Exactly.
And
And in some cases, you have to grow your own food, like we used to do back in the day. If you got the green thumb, and here's my situation with that. I think a lot of times people don't factor in tomorrow, and what you have to do is you have to get somebody who knows how to handle tomorrow. I'll give you an example. My mom and dad probably would have been celebrating 50-year wedding anniversary. My dad passed away when I was 18 years old. Okay. Now, growing up, when I saw my mom and dad handle business, what they did was they actually put together all the bills together. They had a notebook. They wrote everything out. Hey, this is what we got coming in. This is what we got going on. They worked together. Well, my dad passed away when he was 18. Well, guess what? The house still ran because my dad had conversations with my mom on where the money is, what it does, where to come from, and we did not miss a beat. And here's the thing, what I've learned about this COVID situation is that tomorrow is not promised. And we need to start acting like that and start cherishing our loved ones and start treating them a whole lot better, because tomorrow is definitely not promised. And you should always have those conversations about what's going on in that person's life, find out how they're doing, that type of thing. And you'll start to put things in this proper perspective when it comes to things like sex and money, because tomorrow is definitely not promised.
That's a fact.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody's making some wonderful points, and I'm hearing more cohesion than any disagreement. So that's always wonderful. And so that's what you want as a man and woman. You want to be able to have these conversations and to be able to talk these things through. And I like it. I think it takes two incomes these days. I think we're living in a different time and day where it does take two incomes these days, because things have changed with the economy. And then what COVID-19 also taught us is that it's so important to be equally yoked and to really have compatibility with the person that you're with. And I always talk about my 3 S's. I'm going to talk about it every video. You got to have that spiritual compatibility, the social compatibility, and the sexual compatibility. I think you have to match in all 3 of those areas, to be compatible in all 3 of those areas. And when we're talking about the finances, I think as I've listened to people, and me also being in ministry and people telling me things and confidence and knowing different people's situations, a lot of divorces took place during these last 2 years because people can't seem to get along for 24 hours. And that's a shame if you're married and you can't go one day without arguing and fighting and fussing over something, whether it be finances or something else. I'm telling you, during these COVID-19 times, true colors have come out. And
yeah, I think people finally found out who they was with.
Exactly.
once they're under pressure. Here's the thing: you don't know what you got until you put somebody under pressure. That's just like a tube of toothpaste. You know what I'm saying? You don't know until it gets squeezed, and then it starts coming out. You can't put it back in there. Once some words is said, and people take that to heart. So you have to guard your heart and guard your mouth. You know what I'm saying? So that's just one of those things. You have to make sure you know what you're doing. You know, everybody don't handle pressure the same. You know what I mean? Some people have been through a lot and they can handle a lot. They built for this. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. You don't know what type of war you got until you put them under pressure. You see what I'm saying? And you don't know what type of woman you got until she's under pressure. Yes. But my thing is this: I know nobody wants to be under pressure all the time. That is not fun, and that's not stressful. It's very stressful, and it breaks your body down, and you don't last as long as you think you're gonna last. You see what I'm saying? We're getting older, and things are starting to ache as we get older, and you're expecting this person to do the same thing they was doing at 20 and at 50, and cutting that grass may take a little bit longer than it used to be, but I'm gonna get it done, baby. Just either that, I'm gonna pay somebody to come out here and do it. But either way it goes, it's gonna have to get done. But my thing is, we have to make sure that we set proper expectations on our spouses and check on them and see how they're doing from time to time. You don't know what's going through their mind. Check on them.
Yeah, in your 20s, ABC. When you start getting into your late 30s and 40s, AARP.
Right. You better say it.
Yeah, that's real, and that's real. And I think, and when you think about it, I think when it all comes down to it is the communication. Communication is so important. I mean, just a small conversation can change, the attitude. It can change the mentality. It can change the vibe. It can change the environment with one good conversation about what you really desire and what you really need. And so now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get down to the nitty gritty now here when it comes to the second part here as we discuss the finances now. Now it's time to talk about sex. I know a lot of people don't want to talk about sex. A lot of Christians seem to be very conflicted when you talk about sex. It's a taboo thing. I know the church doesn't touch on it a lot, but when you have a conversation with Editor Mel Brown, we're going to talk about it. We're going to have a real conversation about it. All right. And so the first question when it comes to the sex, I think you guys did a wonderful job with touching on the finances. And so I think we covered that pretty well. And I like everything that was said. I think you dropped some bombs and jewels, everybody, to be able to continue to push the conversation forward into something that's very positive and some things for the people to think about. And so how important to you, ladies and gentlemen, is the sexual conversation before getting into a committed relationship with someone? How important is that sexual conversation to you?
To be honest, before when I was, a young whippersnapper, I tried to stay away from a couple of things. But the older that I got, and then when I got married, I was like, hey, listen, I need to have some discussions, because one of the things that fuels intimacy is sex. So you need to have that conversation. You need to have a conversation of, number one, what are the expectations? You ain't got to dive into, the numbers of, okay, well, she been with 25 people or he been with, 13. You don't have to dive into, necessarily that, but you need to dive into what are your expectations physically? Because if you don't, one of the shockers that you find out about getting married is that you will then find out what that person's interpretation of sex is. And if you have not at least had an introduction to what the idea of that is, to know whether you can keep up or not, you're going to get left behind. Whether you got to, ladies, he might, want it all. He might have him a few blue chew pills or ginseng sauce or whatever you want to call it. To go there, and ladies, you might, you might be one to hop like a bunny rabbit. We need to know these things before you get down the road to certain things.
One of the things I like to talk about. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I just wanted, because what Brian had said about the acts and how many partners you had, and I don't think I'm going to ask that question ever again. I mean, the reason why I'm not going to ask that question ever again is that, listen, people can lie. They can lie and tell you some different number than
until it's time to perform.
But this is what happens. This is what happened to me. Now this is, I haven't always been saved, and even saved, I haven't always. I'll just be honest with you, like I said, even being saved, fornication has taken place. All right, and so I'm just being honest with you. I mean, it's just real. But and this is the thing. I had already had the sexual act, but I asked the woman. I said, we just was talking, and then I said, how many people you've been? Maybe 10. Then she said, no, you don't want to know the answer to that question. I said, I don't want to know the answer to that question. I said, how many people? You said 30? She said, you don't want to know the answer to this question.
Just turn the camera off. Turn the camera off right now. Turn it off. Turn the camera off.
Listen,
I don't want to see your face right now.
And I said, 60? And you don't want to know the answer to that question. So now, listen, I'm not shaming anybody who's had over 60 or 80 sexual partners. This is not a shaming session. It's just to let you know, maybe you don't need to know the answer to those questions, especially if you really like the person, if you're really interested in them, because we know God's grace covers a multitude of sins. But to me, that was a big turnoff. I didn't want to, after knowing that, I didn't want to be with her. I wasn't going to pursue a relationship with her long term. So I know people say numbers don't matter, and which they don't if you have a conversation. If you're into somebody, they change your life, they're a different person. But some things I think that would be important to me. If you got over, I'm gonna just go ahead and let
some stuff you take to the grave, as my grandmother
Yeah.
said. Take it to the
But
grave.
I appreciate the honesty, though. But go ahead. I just wanted to throw that story out there. I just like that, you know.
I agree to a certain extent. So when you go and getting into numbers, that can be a turnoff, and it can be telling, and that just may very well be your life person. Mm-hmm. So I think we don't take into consideration testing. Mm-hmm. So regardless of how many people a person has been with, a test will tell you if we can move forward or not. HIV, hepatitis, syphilis, gonorrhea, herpes, chlamydia, trichomonas, everything. Just get the test done. If you really are into this person and you think that this can be your lifelong partner, get the test. The heck with a number. How many people have you been with? He's not going to tell the truth, or he may. And next thing you know, it's like, dang, he did it. And you keep trying to move forward and move past it, and you can't, because you want to unhear the number, and you cannot unhear the number. So get the test, and move forward in that direction. And if something comes back that you are not willing to partake in, even with PrEP, step back, leave it alone. And communication is key. And Brian, I'm glad you said sex and love and intimacy, or no, not love, sex and intimacy. A lot of, I'm gonna go here first. A lot of men get intimacy and sex entangled, but I'm finding a lot of women do as well. So we also need to start having that conversation that, you know, men and women need to understand what intimacy is, what sex is. Sex and love is different. Intimacy and love is different. Intimacy and sex is different. So we definitely need to start having that conversation as well.
I'm going to talk about a little bit about sex. Sex has two functions: one, procreation, and two, for bonding with your mate. And sometimes people may have an unhealthy relationship with sex due to past experiences. And so those are some of those questions or conversations that you may need to discuss. Say, for instance, if a partner doesn't like to be touched a certain way, you need to make sure that they understand, hey, I don't like to be touched a certain way. And just, you know, kind of make it an exploratory thing. You know what I mean? Talk to each other, because sometimes people's experiences may dictate how they view sex. You see what I'm saying? I'll give an example. Say, for instance, if my love language is physical touch and quality time, well, sex is going to enhance how I bond with you. But if your love language is something like gifts or whatever, sex may not turn you on. But here's the thing, that's how I relate to it. I might not feel loved if you don't want to have sex with me, because I relate to you on a greater way through physical touch and quality time, if that is my love language. So those are some of those different little conversations that you need to have about how this person views sex. Is this something that makes you feel closer to me? Is this something that we bond? Also, if we do have kids, how do we address that in the future? Just have all those conversations up front. And also make sure, like I said earlier, know your status. You know, you can't be out here willy-nilly doing whatever it is you're gonna do. I'm gonna put my business out there. Once I had my test done or whatever, I shut it down. I said, thank you, Lord. I appreciate it. Thanks for playing. Uno and Uno out. You understand what I'm saying? So once I did that, I was like, I can go into a relationship with a clean bill of health. I don't have to worry about any other foolishness or anything. I said, baby, I present to you my body a full living sacrifice. I did what I was supposed to do. So those are the things you can have. Those you can go into a conversation a little bit more freeing, and it'll actually allow you to be a little closer to your mate once you know what your status is.
I agree with Tree and Jared on the testing. That's just something that I feel like it should always be a requirement. Definitely want a clean bill of health. And another one is frequency. That can be an issue. You know, what's a lot to someone could be a little to someone else. So if you're not discussing frequency, you know, someone's going to be upset. Someone's going to get their feelings hurt. Someone's going to feel rejected. So I just think that is just very, very key. Frequency and getting that test.
3 and 9 is a totally different number when you step into the other side. 3.
True that. And then not only that, not only that, when you introduce kids, say for instance, you and your spouse been together, whatever, for a while, and kids will take a lot out of you. You know what I'm saying? Keeping up with them or whatever. Your partner may not feel up to it because they're tired. You see what I'm saying? So sometimes you have to clear the calendar and say, hey, look, I understand you're tired or whatever. It's okay. You know what I mean? You got to give them the ability to say, hey, not tonight, honey. And don't make them feel guilty about it. Does that make sense? Because like I said earlier, we're getting older. Kids, sometimes they don't always, be in the right place in the right time, and they want their attention or whatever. And sometimes they need attention from time to time too. And that also cuts into your intimacy with your spouse. So all of that stuff has to be taken into consideration and given understanding. And don't make your spouse feel bad if they don't feel like, doing it at that particular moment in time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you just can't always be tired either, though.
You're right about that.
Yeah. And let's, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. So I was just going to come from the other thing with either tiredness, and you have to remember with certain ailments, certain parts don't work as well anymore. So when you're bonding initially, you have to make sure you're really bonding and it's not based off of sex, because when things don't happen, like Lana said, is frequent, or if things aren't doesn't feel as good anymore, you have to figure out a way to still stay connected with your person. And if sex not doing it, and that's what you guys bonded and grew off of, and your relationship flourished off of, you're going to have to figure it out, and it's going to be more difficult later on.
Man.
I know Jared mentioned clearing the calendar. I just wanted to double back on that. For some, that can really kill the spontaneity. If you're planning, that can be very humdrum and boring. And so, that's just something that you want to consider too. It's just knowing your mate, you know the vibe. There's just a lot to work around. You have to be in sync. You have to be willing to, it's a give and take. It can't be all about you.
Yes.
Now, I will say this: when it comes down to men, we don't really need much spontaneity. All we need is just a willing vessel.
Right.
I hear you with that.
All right. And sometimes you may need a calendar, because some people forget. Other people have needs too. So like, hey, it's been a whole month now. You slacking. What's going on? I signed up for 3 times a week, and you handing this out once a quarter. That ain't what I signed up for.
If they forget a month, that means we need to have the conversation of who is entertaining you.
Right.
No.
Right.
We don't need to have a conversation. We need a manifestation immediately.
You better say it. Intervention.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. It don't take much to get you going. All I need to see is a little jiggle.
That's right.
You got the end time now. I know that.
You better say it.
It's time for it to go down. But Shaw makes some great points again. Like I said, I'm always coming from an antithesis point of view, just to challenge you a little bit. Now we're in a different culture now. When we talk about, I remember back in the days, if y'all was listening to Missy Elliott and I Don't Want a 1 Minute Man and all this stuff, and he got to be putting it down right. And then you had back in the days that MC Light talk about she want a rough neck and him to put it down the way she want. Now, if you talk about that kind of, because you just start that get into, I can't be no 1 minute man, and and then these are things that, and y'all said some good things too. I think it was especially about the intimacy portion, because if you're bonding during the day, and if you're being intimate with the woman, it's not so much sexual. It's just that you're bonding, you're spending time with that person, the little kisses and the hugs throughout the day and that kind of thing. And so I'm going into the second question. If an individual was not able to meet your sexual expectations, would you be able to continue in the relationship with that person? Or after let's take it, because we're Christian, we're going to come from this perspective, not necessarily doing the act, but after the conversation, and you found out, hey, look, we're not, connect. I don't think we're going to match. Would that be like you had some sexual expectations, you want to do certain things, and they say they don't want to do them and they don't do them? Would that hinder you from getting into the relationship with them?
Is this a will issue or a skill issue?
That's a good question.
Is this a will issue or a skill issue?
Let's say a will issue. Like, look, I think it's nasty. You know what? I don't want to do it. You know, and we're grown adults, okay? All right, because most women are okay with, you know, vaginal. Okay, that's most women. Okay, but you talk about oral sex and other things. A lot of people don't believe that you should put the mouth on the penis and things of that nature. So if somebody and some men don't believe in, you know, going down into the garden of love, like it says in Song of Solomon, right? It's in the Bible. It's in the Word. All right, it's there.
It's in the Word.
Right? It's in there.
It's called exegete. Exegete.
And you got to know how to exegete that word. That's what they talk about.
That too.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that? Would that be a deal breaker? I ain't gonna be able to do it, or you gonna be willing to deal with not getting your needs met?
We have to be honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
By now we know what we like. We like what we like. And we just have to be honest with ourselves. And you're going to have to look at the pros and cons of the overall situation. I think there's a lot to leave on the table there as it pertains to sex, but some people's attitudes may be very different from my attitude towards sex. So if sex is a huge ordeal for you, then that might be something you want to leave on the table. If it's not a huge deal for you and you're stimulated more emotionally, then that may not be an issue. And I just think it really depends on the person and what you know, if you like oral, if you just really like oral and this person's not willing to do oral, if oral is a huge thing for you, then you're going to have to be honest. And I just think that's what it really comes down to.
Yeah, sometimes it comes down to you might not be very good at what you're doing. So what happens is you have to have those conversations with that person and say, hey, look, I really would like to do this, but you're not really good. Now, if you're open and willing to learn, then yeah, you know, we'll do that. So those conversations need to be had. Some people just don't do it because they don't believe in doing it. But sometimes, you know, people might just be bad at it and they just need a little bit more practice. So I had an open conversation and talk to them. Say, hey, I like it like this. You know what I'm saying? And you giving it to me like I like it like this. Let me show you. And had that conversation with your mate.
But you also
really,
because if your partner, you have to know your partner. If your partner is not willing to listen to your likes and dislikes, it's no progression. It's stalemated. So if I'm saying, you know, I need this and I'm not getting that from you, the frequency I'm okay with, but longevity needs to absolutely be there. Or even if the longevity is not there, then I need it a little bit more frequent. And if he is feeling some type of way, that's going to cause anxiety because he's not okay with who he is. And it's not like I am or she is saying it to demean him or disparage him in any kind of fashion. It's just he's not comfortable. And so when that anxiety kicks in, you're definitely not going to be able to perform now. So I can forget about longevity and frequency. So you know, so again, that communication and knowing who your partner is, what you can say to him, how you need to present it to him, you know, and it do take a lot out of you when you have a partner that is very masculine and is not willing to hear you or isn't a very good communicator. You just have to find other ways. But Lord Jesus, if he has all of those, the masculinity and the not being a good communicator, and then he think he is all of that in the bedroom, and you say one little thing that tilts him off his, you know, his platform, or I don't know how that's ever going to be a good situation moving forward, because there's going to be a plethora of problems in the bedroom after that. Because he's going to have anxiety. He's always in his head while the act is going on. If it occurs, am I doing it right? Is she satisfied? When in all actuality, she's never saying she wasn't satisfied. She's just saying what she likes and how she likes it. Right. And he's listening, like you said, Jared, he's listening with emotion. He's listening with emotion.
I just think too, just with the conversation ahead of time, you'll be able to determine if you're sexually compatible or not. You just know. You have to be honest. You know by now we know what we like. We know what's important to us. And so if you're having this conversation, don't think that you're going to sway somebody into doing something that they don't like because you like it, and vice versa. Also in that area, it's usually pretty simple. Either you're compatible or you're not. If you're doing this on the back end, as opposed, if you're doing this on the back end, you're doing it prior to marriage, you know if you're compatible or not.
So I just saw a comment, and Jared, you know how I am when I see stuff and folk want to be all deep.
Let me put it up, Brian, because I believe I know which one it is, sir.
I'm about to.
Yes.
So I'm about to.
I try not to look at that one.
No, see, I'm one of those ones. I'm new school. I like to address stuff. So this is what I'm gonna say. This is what I'm gonna say about that. Now, if we're talking about outside of the confines of marriage, hey, you know what? I go for it. But if we're talking about the inside the confines of marriage, the Bible says that the bed is undefiled. When we're looking at undefiled, that means that there is no separation, of that. Whatever that couple decides that they want to do in the confines of their marriage, that's what they're allowed to do, because God honors the covenant. So for those that are, a little bit religious, and they believe in, hey, missionary is the way, more power to you. But for us that have been updated with the technology of sexual experience in our marriages, listen, we're going to do what it is that we do. We just ain't going to tell you. But that's all I'm going to say about that.
Exactly. Yeah, the Bible says in Hebrews 13:4, marriage is honorable in all, and the bed undefiled, but whoremongers and adulterers God will judge. That is the scripture. So whatever you decide to do with you, your wife, your husband, in your bedroom is between you, your wife, your husband, and God. That's between.
And then if we dive into that scripture with God's real definition of judging, a lot of people look at judging and be like, oh, God's going to get you. No, the biblical definition of judging is to actually put back in right standing. So what God does is that God puts you back in right standing so that you can continue the relationship with him. A lot of people have that word judging all wrong. Well, I'm going to no, judging means to put the heart back in its proper place, meaning that God will allow and align things for you so that you can begin to get back to the heart of God. So we have to be very, very careful when we're trying to judge an individual, because at the end of the day, it just really means getting back in the right alignment for God's will for your life. But right. We talking about sex and money. We're not talking about that.
No, that's good, Brian. No, that's good, man. All of this stuff is helping for more of an understanding when it comes to sex, because sex is a beautiful thing. I think people demonize it. Of course, it's supposed to be done during the confines of marriage. That's the only, way God approves of it is in marriage when you're married. But it's a wonderful, beautiful experience. And let's not front now. People aren't having sex to procreate now. Brothers and sisters are having sex because it feels good to them. So that's why sex goes out. It's a great feeling. It's a stress reliever. Doctors and nurses would tell you that as well. And so I'm going to get off of that. But I'm just saying that it's important to have that conversation, because if we don't match sexually after the conversation, and it's just, you can't change anybody. You can't. That's what happens. People go into marriage and they never have the conversation, and they are rudely awakened, and you're expecting your wife to do this, and she tell you that's the worst time. That would be the worst time in the world for your wife to tell you, look, you want it, you've been waiting, and she's not going to do it because she doesn't believe in it. And we're trying to divorce-proof these marriages. And like I said, divorce, the number one and number two reasons for divorce is sexual issues and financial issues. And so we're trying to divorce-proof this stuff so that when it comes time for you to be married, that you got all these conversations that are taking place and they're out of the way. And we go to this last question. Everything that everybody said, I think it's great. And I think we're discussing it with some tact, and I think people are getting an understanding. So from the comments, you can see that people have different thoughts, different mentalities when it comes to sex. People think different things and believe different things. So that conversation is important. People think it's a sin for certain things. So the scripture, once again, Hebrews 13:4, marriage is honorable when all in the bed undefiled, but whoremongers and adulterers.
I'm gonna say this: you can be backed up if you want to, and God's still gonna get His glory. That's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
That's real.
Listen,
that's real.
Listen,
real.
if we go keep it 100, man. If you're gonna operate outside of that, make sure you protect yourself. Just being real, because people not always gonna do what they say they're gonna do. Just make sure you take care of yourself and take care of your health.
And that's a decision. I'm going to be totally honest with you. You can have the conversation, but you're really not going to know for sure. And it's just a faith walk. If you're not having sex before marriage, it's a faith walk to believe that the sex is going to be great. But now that's the risk that you're taking. If it's not great, if it's not good, you didn't have the sexual act, you didn't have sex, and you were being pleasing to God, but the sex it could be horrible, it could be bad. Mm-hmm. And I can speak to you from a man who's been married before, a man who's single now, and I can speak for you from different perspectives. And you definitely need to have these conversations, especially sexual conversations, because you don't know a person's past. Some people have been molested. Some people have been abused, and it affects their affection and affects their intimacy as well. You may be wondering, why isn't he affectionate, or why isn't she affectionate? I'm an affectionate person. There may be some molestation that's taking place. So you got to talk about all these things. Do they have a homosexual past? Have they been dealing with men and women been dealing with men? I'm telling you, I've had these conversations, and I realized one time that, hey, yeah, okay, now I understand that this particular woman is used to having sex with women. So you got to have these different conversations. I know a lot of people don't want to have them. I know it's taboo.
Right.
But you got to have this conversation. And I know we're coming down. Go ahead. You want to jump in there?
Yes, I want to jump in.
Sure.
So I just had a conversation with a guy, and he was saying that him and his wife end up getting divorced for that very reason. She wanted him to be a certain way with her, and he couldn't. And he said he was molested. Oh. And I asked him if he ever had that conversation. And he said the molestation went on from 12 years old to 15. And I asked him, did you ever have that conversation with him? And he said, yes. And I said, well, did you have that conversation before you got married? He said, no. I said, how far into the marriage did you have that conversation with her? He said about a few years before they actually got divorced, when they started having problems. And I said right then and there, moving forward in your next relationship, that's something that even if you're uncomfortable with it, you have to seek therapy, coaching, psychology, something. You have to go see someone so that you can get comfortable with speaking about your trauma, so that the woman that you're dating, she'll know what you're willing to give and what you just don't have the capability of giving or the ability to give. And maybe she may help you to work past that trauma phase. And I'm glad you said that. And then the other thing, when Jared was saying women and men alike, I've talked to men who were molested by women because she was their babysitter. And now he's on a journey of vengeance, trying to figure out women and what one woman has to give to him. And it's like, but you're hurting everything you touch. And you need to understand that you may be upset and be angry with women. Maybe that's why you're carrying on. So like you said, we all said communication, being okay with who you are, going to seek help for whatever trauma that was done to you, either in your childhood, young adulthood, young adult years. You just need to figure out who you are and how to move forward. Because if you're damaged and you're not correcting it, anything you touch, you're going to damage.
That's a great point. I mean, that's why, as we're talking about it now, it's so important to have the financial and sexual conversations. And I want to leave you guys with this last question, and then give you guys a chance to let everybody know how they can get a hold of you. But this is a question, and we're going just a little bit over, but this is a question that has been coming up in the group, in a lot of groups, not just mine and SSNK, but how do you ladies feel? And I know you don't have to, you can answer this generally. This is nothing personal, but do you think that the decision to be abstinent has caused some men and women to be single longer than those who are having sex? Do you think the decision to be abstinent, but this is for Christian women who aren't having sex, a lot of Christian women, just to give a little bit more insight, feel like that they're being passed over. A lot of the Christian men are passing them by because they're not having sex before marriage. And a lot of the ladies that are having sex, some of them, not all of them, are getting married a little bit faster. But before you guys jump in, I'll just, say that if a person decides to have sex before marriage, it's not going to guarantee you a husband. And even if you don't have sex before marriage, it's not going to guarantee you a husband as well. God did not promise us spouses. He didn't promise. That's not a promise that he made. He didn't promise us spouses. And so your character and your personality and the kind of person you are will ultimately get you into a marriage situation, as not so much your faithfulness to abstinence. And even if you are having sex, it's not going to guarantee you a husband either. But go ahead. That question there has come up a few times, and I want to hear from you guys' perspective on that. Do you think, and I'll give you my answer, and you guys can go ahead and address it, but I think in some cases, yes, that the women who are abstinent, these brothers are passing you by. And I'm not trying to be funny, or there's some truth and reality in that, but that's where your relationship in Christ comes in, where you got to stand strong and say, I know these brothers are passing by, I'm not having sex, and they're leaving me. Go ahead, jump in there, you guys. But I'm gonna stay faithful. Go ahead.
I think having boundaries, irregardless, gets women passed by. So as Lana would say, at this age and stage we're in, we know what we want. We know what we're willing to put up with. We don't expect perfection, but we know our level of acceptance. And so if you have a boundary that this is what I expect of you to conduct yourself in the dating or relationship phase, and you cannot reciprocate that, then of course he's going to go to someone that's more easier to deal with, or doesn't have as many expectations or requirements. So I think it's just not sex. I think it's boundaries and sex. Once you get to a certain age and you say, well, I expect you to be consistent. And, and you keep talking. I was having a conversation with my son earlier, and he asked me about a specific person. And I said, well, no, we're not talking anymore. And he was like, why? And so I told him, things that I ask for, I don't think that they're big things to be reciprocated. And so after a year or so, it's either I see some forward movement or I don't. And if I don't see forward movement, that means I'm no longer a victim. I become a volunteer. And I will no longer, I've been a volunteer before, maybe too long, but I don't want to become a volunteer anymore. I don't want to subscribe to that anymore. So, I don't even want to be a victim anymore. So I kind of have to cut losses and cut ties. And my son said, well, Ma, he was a good dude. I said, being a good guy does not mean that you're good for a relationship. So yes, he is a good guy, but he's not good for a relationship, at least not with me. Someone else may be able to handle who he is and how he is. It's just not for me. And again, you have to know and be flat-footed. Like, this is what I will accept, and this is what I will not accept, regardless if time is running out, if you're getting older. I'm about to be an empty nester. Lord Jesus, somebody send me because Jesus, I don't know what I'm gonna do. My attention goes to my kids, and so it's like, you know, I'm not going to self-preservation. I'm not going to make you comfortable and make me uncomfortable. I'm going to preserve self. I also want to preserve what we have. But if you don't have that same ideology, no. So yes, I do believe sex and boundaries are getting women passed by. Good women.
I agree with Tree. I think one or three things usually happen. They're going to stick around and test the boundaries. Going to stick around and test it. They're going to get gone pretty quick. Or it's going to be a good guy. They're okay with your boundaries, and you're going to see where it goes. I would just say if it's three, you know, just never get caught up in the thinking just because you've met a good guy that's willing to, you know, they can get down with your healthy boundaries. Don't think that he's the one. You still have to go through that process to see if you are compatible and if you're going to be able to move forward.
Well, the way I look at it is like this, and I'm more of a historian. So within the last, I say, really the last 10, 12 years, there's been what we would consider to be this emphasis on purity culture. Now, it started out as a wonderful, wonderful expression. But then what ended up happening is probably about halfway through it, abstinence and even celibacy, it became a weapon against the other person. So it then began to become weaponized. And I think when you're looking at the aspect of sex, and Jared always says this, and I love it. He said, define your why. Why are you abstinent? Why are you abstaining? Is it because you're trying to prove a point to God? Is it you want a badge of honor to say, ooh, everybody else is out here hunching and I am laying down, eating my gummy bears in my bed with socks on my feet? Or is it you have reached a point where you understand the power behind what that activity actually is going to lead you to? And so I think one thing is, are good women getting passed up, you know, because they're not having sex with the men out here? Yes, they are. But then this is the aspect of, okay, what's your attitude? Like, why is it, like, what are you presenting? You know what I'm saying? Like, if you present yourself as, well, I'm not having sex because of such and such, then to the man, he's going to be like, oh, well, you're holding on to this like it's a badge of honor, when in actuality, it's really should be a part of the integrity of who you are. I don't have sex because from an integrity standpoint, I love God. And from an integrity standpoint, I want to be able to express myself in the undefiled confines of marriage. And for the ones that's out here that's doing it, that may be getting married, understand that just because you've experienced sex and you get married, that does not alleviate all the other exposures that marriage is going to bring, because this is one thing that marriage does. Marriage, number one, it becomes a mirror of the things you need to work on. And number two, it exposes you to things that you didn't even think about working on, you know? So you have to really, with that particular aspect, you have to define why is it that you are abstaining from sex, and what's the overall goal? Are you looking to abstain from sex because it's a contest with, you know, your friends? Are you looking to abstain from sex because it's something that you just, I believe in doing? Or is there a dynamic that says, you know what? My relationship with God requires me to honor him in this particular way, and I would rather honor him in this particular way. And if you don't desire to honor him, we can be friends, we can be cool, we can sit down and have conversations, but this is a boundary, as she said before, that I will not cross. And my reasons for not crossing that boundary is I want to get to know who you are, without the physical implementation or the physical pressure to give you something before it's time. Because when something is given before it's time, or it is left with when there's not a definition, then what will end up happening is the significance of that very thing will not have any weight.
I agree. I think a lot of times people like to use abstinence as an idol. You know what I mean? What they'll do is they'll make their abstinence their God. And they'll say, well, I'm abstaining for this. And yes, they want a badge of honor. One of the things you should look at is abstinence can be used in different ways. One of the ways you can use abstinence is a means of protecting yourself from yourself. I'll give you an example. Whenever people have sex, it releases endorphins and dopamine and stuff like that. And sometimes we will create a fantasy in our head that this particular person is the one, because we have this feeling. And what we do is we associate that feeling with that person. And then we start to overlook all the bad habits that person has, everything that they said slick under their breath. And they're not honoring us because we're overlooking it, because we're overloaded on hormones and chemicals and things like that. Yes, you can have healthy boundaries and borders, but make sure it is for you to protect yourself. Sometimes protect yourself from yourself, sometimes from bad habits. You know what I mean? Tamil, I think we had a conversation about a while back about gentlemen having an addiction to porn. You know what I mean? How it rewires the way you think, and it creates unhealthy expectations on your partner and things of that nature. When you're having sex with people outside of marriage, sometimes that can rewire how you think, and you're not able to have a healthy conversation or have a healthy relationship with somebody without having that carrot dangled in there. Because sometimes people will do stuff for you because they're getting sex, not because they love you. It's because they're getting something out of you. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So if you know you fall susceptible to something like that, you might want to learn how to put up boundaries and use abstinence as a tool to help you govern yourself accordingly, so that way you make better decisions in the future. Have some discipline. You know, we call it de-discipline where we work at. When we talk to the fellas, hey, fellas, have some discipline about yourself. You know what I mean? Make sure you protect yourself financially. Make sure you protect yourself physically. You know what I mean? The worst thing you want to have happen is for you to go out and get something you can't get rid of, and then the next day you find the love of your life and you have to explain to her, hey, I can't be with you this way. That is a sinking feeling that you do not want to have. And I think a lot of people don't think or take that in consideration, because that moment, that feeling, that emotion is flooding into those butterflies and those things, and then they try to tie all this stuff together, and you got emotions and you make bad decisions. You see what I'm saying? So now you stuck with this person, you stuck with that person, and you got to carry that, and it creates dynamics and things like that. So when God tells you to do things in a certain order, he tells you to do that for a reason, because he loves you. Not because he's coming down on you, or he's a buzzkill or a joy kill or anything like that. Sometimes we don't have an opportunity to explain all the things that could possibly happen to you. He just say, like your parents used to say, just do it because I told you to do it. I ain't got time to explain to you everything that could happen or could not happen or whatever. Just do it because I told you to do it. You know what I mean? And sometimes we have to look at that as abstinence as a tool to help us to protect ourselves. So abstinence is not a bad thing, but we just have to make sure that we don't turn it into something that it was not designed to do.
Absolutely. You guys made some wonderful points, very wonderful points. And I think we're going to end it there. I want to, I'm just a realist, you guys. I love the Lord Jesus. I believe in living holy, living right, living a life pleasing unto the Lord. But you ladies, you got to be okay with the results. This should not make you an angry woman or be angry at all the Christian men, because there are Christian men who are passing you by, and because you're not having sex with them. So stand strong in your faith, stand strong in the relationship you have with the Lord, and continue to trust and believe that God is still going to send you a mate who is going to be abstinent with you. So I always teach this, and I'm just a realist, and I continue to teach it, whether they disagree with it or not. If you decide to be with someone, make sure that they're on the same path as you. If you are abstinent, make sure you get with somebody who's going to be abstinent with you. And if you're not abstinent, get with somebody who's not going to be abstinent with you, that's going to have sex with you, because it's going to continue to cause issues, cause problems. If one is waiting, and the other, it's just going to cause confusion and problems in a relationship. And let's be real, every Christian man isn't waiting for sex, and every Christian woman ain't waiting to be married before sex. It's the reality out there. But I want you to stand on it, and you have to be okay. And ladies and men, you have to be okay if you're getting to your older ages. If you understand what I'm saying, you may not. It may come in an older age when you're married, maybe 50, 60 years old, because there is a serious issue with this abstinent having sex before marriage thing. And you got to be okay when I'll ask this question. Are you okay, men and women, with going to your grave and not being married? You got to ask yourself that question, because are you going to be okay? Are you going to be okay with your relationship and your joy in Christ and serving the Lord and living right in that capacity? And you may not ever get married. There may not be somebody that waits for you until you that kind of thing. So you gotta, if you're gonna 100% dive into being a Christian and living a holy life, those are things that have not been promised to you, but you can get those things because you trust and believe in God and have faith to know that God can do anything. He can provide you with whatever you need and desire. And if your desire is to be married and have a spouse, and God can do it, and he will do it, and you stand on that. But I want you to look at all aspects of whatever decision that you make. And okay, you guys, and I want to give you guys a chance to say your last words and let everybody know how they can get a hold of you. And we start at the top to the bottom, Brian, and then down to a Tree.
I was on mute. My name's Coach Brian. You can reach me on Facebook, Instagram, Coach BT 316. Here on Facebook with my name, Brian Thomas. I am available to do life coaching, date coaching, and relationship coaching sessions. And yeah, if you want to reach out, talk about all of those different elements of relationships, or even dive into your history so that you can become a more effective partner, reach out to me. I'm gonna do everything I can to best help you get to the place that you are desiring to go.
Go ahead, JB.
Okay, good. I thought you wanted Tree to go next. Here's the thing. You can reach me. My name is Jared Barker. You can reach me on Facebook. Currently working on a YouTube page called Lost in Translation, where we try to have discussions where we talk about different relationships and how we decipher how we talk to each other and how we communicate each other.
You can reach me on Facebook, Lana Love on Facebook, or it's Soul Sanctuary on Instagram.
Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Tree. You can reach me on Instagram and or Facebook, Tree of Life Doula and Nurturing Life Coach. And I bring babies into the world. I assist moms and families alike. And I'm also here for relational issues, self-empowerment. I'm here for it all. I've been through things. I don't know it all, but as Brian stated, I'll do my best to help you be the best you can possibly be.
Absolutely. And I think you ladies and gentlemen have done a wonderful job with just the points and your perspectives of everything that I've heard. I've enjoyed it. And I think that the conversation was edifying to the body of Christ. I think that these men and women gave you something to think about when it comes to some of the conversations, some of the questions that you may need to ask or may want to ask moving forward when it comes to finances and when it comes to sex, so that you can definitely have a great understanding and to communicate with your potential partner to know the expectations when it comes to money and when it comes to finances. And of course, above all, we definitely want to make sure that we put God first, make sure that we're seeking God and we're seeking his face daily through prayer and reading his word. To stay close to God, and so that we can pray and the Lord can bless us with our spouses. My prayer daily is that the Lord will prepare my heart and mind for a wife. And I think that's prayer that I think everybody should say is that your heart and your mind needs to be prepared for that individual coming into your life. And so I think that's it. And any last words anybody want to say, or everybody good?
Get tested. Know your status.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed the conversation. I hope that you enjoyed the discussion. And hey, we catch you on the next one. Thank you so much for tuning in. You guys be blessed. I love you all with the love of the Lord Jesus. And we'll catch you on the next discussion. God bless.
God bless.
Indeed.